Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to take what you've done in your story outline, which was the assignment you did before this one, and translate that into a full-length story. And this is what's going to be going on this My 7th Grade Draft document. So my first step here is to actually pull up my outline. I want to remind myself what I outlined before this. Now I'm looking at a blank document because I'm not technically doing this assignment, but you guys, before you're doing your draft, should have this document filled out. You should have already thought about things like your conflict here and the solution to that, your characters and setting, and your theme. And you've also taken the time to draft out a timeline of your story. With all that information, should be a little bit easier to figure out how to put that together into a story. I would suggest starting with your timeline here. So think about how you were going to begin your story, and hopefully that should include some characters and setting. So how are you going to let your reader know where you are when the story is taking place and who was in it? So for me, I'm going to go back to my draft now. I'm going to pretend that in that beginning box, I decided that, first of all, I wanted my story to take place on the first day of online learning. So that means some characters might be you guys, my students. It might be me. And for you guys, if you're doing online learning, it might be your parents, or my parents are not with me, so they will not be in my story. But I'm going to go ahead and draft out that beginning just based on that information that I need to include to set up my story. So here you guys can see my beginning of my story set up. So I've got a couple key elements here that you want to also see somewhere in your introduction. I tell you when the story takes place at the very beginning. Actually, I have Monday morning in March. I also tell you where I am, my kitchen counter. So as you guys can see, I'm setting up here to tell you about my first day teaching online. So you get a sense of where I'm at home. This is that day in March that we started. And I do also give you a sense of characters, which is kind of unique in this situation because it truly was just me. I did not have you guys there with me in person. And as I'm an adult, I do not have my parents at home with me either. But maybe those are people you might include in your story. But here's just an example of how you might want to set your story up. By reading this, you can get a sense of where and when I am at. So going forward, you have that picture in your head. I'm going to go back to my outline again. I've done my beginning. I've introduced characters and setting to give you that context. I'm moving over here next to rising action. I have to think about at this point, not only where and when is my story happening, but also I have to think about introducing a problem. I need something to really hook my reader in and get them interested in what's going on. So I'm going to come back here and think about what my problem's going to be. In this case, with talking about distance learning, I'm probably going to be talking about just figuring out how to do it because it's something that none of us have ever done before. And that is most likely going to be the problem that my story focuses on. So I'm going to go here and write my second paragraph, and you're going to see me start to lay that out. Here now I'm laying out that rising action. So here I've drafted out my second paragraph, and as you can see, I'm starting to introduce some sort of problem into my story. Reading here, my problem is going to be really having no idea how to make online learning work the best that it can. This is a problem really all of us faced. We just had no idea how to start this process. So here I'm giving you a little bit more information about where the story's going, and I'm letting you know this is the problem that I'm going to be talking about for the rest of the story. This is my rising action. So now that I've got that laid out, I want to go back to my outline. Let's look at this climax here. I want to think, where did this problem really come to a head? Where was the point in my day where I felt the most concerned about how to make online learning work, or maybe where I faced the biggest issue of the day with making it work? So I'll come back to my draft here. This is going to be my next paragraph, that climax of my story. I'm going to go ahead and write that, and I will update you guys when I'm done with that. All right, here is my climax of the story. So again, I just tried to think back to that day, which feels like forever ago now, and pinpoint the part where I felt the problem of not knowing how to do online learning the most. And what stuck out to me in my mind was as I checked my email throughout the day, just how many emails I got, um, and the struggle with keeping up with those all day long. So that is what I put in as my climax. And I really tried to capture the way that I felt in that moment, which I think is really important when you're writing the climax of a story. Just communicating to the reader, here's how I felt in this moment. Here is why it was maybe the most important moment in understanding why this was the problem in my story. So that's what I've described here in my climax. As you can see, the arc of my story is coming to a close now. I'm going to go back to my outline. The last things left to do are to create the falling action of the story, which starts to explain how the resolution of my problem panned out. So how did I, in my case, how did I figure out a way to keep my email organized and to manage my time doing things at home online? And also, you could think about your conclusion. How do you want to leave off your story, and how do you want to incorporate your theme in some way? So I'm going to come back here, and I actually am going to write both of these things in the same paragraph. I'll go ahead and do that and show that to you guys when I am done. And here you guys can see I have the last paragraph of my story completed. So here I've rolled together the falling action and the conclusion of my story. Because in a very short story like this, those two things can sometimes go together. But I am going to point out the separation between those two so you guys can see it. So I'm going to highlight this part here. This is my falling action. I'm describing to you how I resolved the problem of feeling overwhelmed by my emails, which was my big climax before that. So I explained to you guys how I just decided I'm going to do this one email at a time, one assignment at a time, and I'm not going to think about it big picture. I'm just going to keep it simpler for myself that way. So that's the falling action. I'm explaining to you, here's how I resolved this problem. Here's how I made it through the day. This last part here, this is my conclusion. The reason why is because I've reminded you what I learned in this experience and what I hope to communicate with you through my story. So basically, just taking something big and kind of overwhelming and new and making it through by just taking it one step at a time. That's really the theme of my story. So together, you get my falling action here and my conclusion. And all together, if we look at all these paragraphs now, you have an entire story. It makes it through that arc from beginning to climax to end. And really, I put it all together just referencing what I had here in my timeline. So that's a really important tool for you. Now I'm going to point this out here. I do say your story has to be at least 7 sentences long. And that requirement is really important. I want to make sure that you guys are sticking to that. Your story does not have to be as long as mine is. I believe mine is not exactly sure how many sentences it is, but it is more than 7. So your story does not have to be as long as mine. I know mine is a little bit more lengthy, but it is really important to me that you're hitting this 7-sentence limit because it is very tough to create a full story arc with less writing than that. So just keep that in mind. Make sure that you're giving some detail to your story. Let me know if you're having any issues with this. I know this step can be challenging if you're not quite sure how to go from outline to a full story. So I'm more than happy to help you with that step if that's something that's challenging for you. Otherwise, have at it. I'm really excited to hear about 7th grade from your perspective now.